Jai Hind everyone. Myself Mrignainy Kansal, the Assistant Professor of IT Department, will going to discuss the topic that is the software development lifecycle. That how the complete life cycle is going on over the software when it is moving. Now, here when we are discussing about the software development life cycle, first of all we need to know what is the capability maturity model, that is a CMM model. What is this? This is a benchmark for measuring the maturity of our organization for the software process. That means it is a benchmark that yes, if an organization is making or developing any of the software that need to be touch this standard. Before that touching the standard, that doesn't mean that the software is completely authenticated or completely mature. In the CMM, we having the 5 different levels. The level defining the key points or the maturity on the basis of each and every level. That is 5 levels of the CMM. What are those 5 levels of the CMM? At the first level, that is the initial level in the bottom, is almost the 70% coverage of the 70% of the software. That initially we need to be considered or check that the first phase need to be completed at the first level, that is your 70%. Then in the second level, that is a repeatable level, which will be covering the process to be completed approx 15% of the software. That means the software configuration management, software quality assurance, software project tracking, software project planning, and the requirement management. All these points are going to be covered up when we are moving to the level second. Level second will going to be explained or taking the complete maturity to be defined in the 15% of the software. So these are the actually requirement or the quality assurance will be done in the level 2. Now, this third level will be the defined. The defined level is less than the 10% weightage in the complete maturity of the software. So here we having the peer review, intergroup coordination, the software management, the training program, and all these things will be going to check up in the third level, that will be the defined level, where we are actually having the complete definition of the software and their maturity confirmation. The fourth level will be the managed level, where it is just having the less than 5% of their weightage in the software maturity when it will be going to be crossing all the levels. Here we will going to discuss about the software quality management, the quality process management. All these processes are defined in the CMM level 4. Last one, which having the very less weightage, less than the 1%. That means after reaching to the fifth position, the fifth level, that will the process change management, technology change management, and the defect prediction will be performed in the CMM level 5. That means they touch the level 5, and now if all the 5 levels are completed, it will assure that yes, the software which you have developed is the complete software and making you the complete maturity to be done, and now it is completely ready to process into the market. It will be reached to the market. Now, what are the different SDLC model, that is a software development model? What actually the software development model is, why we require the different software models? Actually to touch the CMM level or the level and to make them process and to touch their benchmark and the standard of the complete software, we require the software development cycle. That means the complete protocol need to be defined and reaching to that, if you follow that protocol, that reach to the complete CMM level and making it a matured software. So a framework that describes the performed and the stage of the software development, that is known as the SDLC. That means it gives you a framework, it gives you the prototype of complete definition that how the software development done. The project will be developed in this standard process only. In this, the first model, the basic and the simplest model defined in the SDLC, which is the waterfall model. In the waterfall model, these are the 6 different levels to be achieved step by step from the above to the below. That means first is the requirement, second is the design, third is the implementation. Then after doing the implementation, we will going to perform the testing, installation, and the maintenance phase, which will be moving after it will going to be released in the market. So in the requirement phase is what? Requirement phase is when the customer is taking the requirement, developer is taking the requirement from the customer. Customer will going to explain you the complete requirement, what actually they want in the software, that defined in the first phase, the pre-phase of the model, that is a requirement gathering. Next is the designing phase. The designing phase will define you the complete design of the complete software, that how the software will be going to be designed. The proper design, the SDLC, that is, it will be defined in the architecture, the representation, the algorithm will be going to be used to develop this software will be defined in the design phase. Next is the implementation, that how you will going to be implemented, what is a source code, what is a platform, how you will going to be stored the database. So what are the different platforms you will going to be used to define the or to implement the software, that will be defined in the implementation phase. The next one are the waterfall strengths. Strength matlab what are the advantage we are getting from the waterfall model. First of all, that is easy to understand. It is very easy because the steps are very clear. Once you take the requirement, then you design it, then you implement it, then you test it and move it into the market and install them. And the maintenance phase will be moving on day by day. Okay. But for the strength cases, we having the easy to understand. It is very simple. There is no complexity. The step by step, very simple steps are going to be involved. This is the basic and the primary model, where you will having the very ease to use them, very easily to understand. For the non-technical person also, just a simple 5 or 6 steps. Then it provides the structure to inexperienced staff. That means if any of these staff get changed, if you are developing any of the software and in between your staff or your developers can change, the another team will easily get up and easily cope up with the other type of how the complete process will be done. The milestone are well understood. That means milestone, that targeted point will be completely and clearly defined in this model. How? That means first target is to taking the requirement, understand them, design on the basis of the requirement, then to implement them, that how it will going to be implemented. Then after designing and the implementation, the testing phase will become that whatever you design the module, how you will integrate them, these are going to be tested them. Then we will going to be install them in the user system and maintenance will be done, whatever the conditions or the updation will be required by the user. So the targeted points are very clear in this. Set the requirement stability. Once the requirement get fixed, once the customer define their requirement in an initial phase will be fixed, it will not having the scenario to take the changes again and again. Good for the management control, plans, staff and tracking will be done when we are controlling over the complete process. Work well when the quality is more important than the cost and schedule. This model will be used when you having the more focus on the quality as compared to the cost and the schedule it will be provided. Why it is so? Because in this model, you first take the requirement and start designing them. In between, if the requirement gets changed, but you have no parameter to take the requirement once again, you fix the requirement and move it to another phase. That means later on, if the customer need to change them, you need to follow the complete process once again. It will increase the time and the cost, but the quality will be maintained. That means once you give the requirement very fixedly, that will be fixed and you will create the process according to the requirement. The quality will going to be maintained with this process. Now, if waterfall model having this much of strengths, this much of advantages, then definitely there are a lot of disadvantages also. That's why the another will become. So what are the different waterfall deficiencies come in the waterfall model? All requirements must be known in the upfront. That means at the initial phase only, the waterfall model will define the complete requirement of the customer. There is no provision to take up the requirement later on phases. Deliverables created for each phase are considered frozen. That means once you fix every step, that it move to the another step. There is no provision to take a backtrack and take the requirement once again. Can give a false impression for the progress also. That means it gives a false impression when we are moving to the progressive. Does not reflect the problem solving nature of the software development as like an iteration of the phases. There is no iteration phases. There is, if once the complete cycle done, then only you have to be start from the scratch if you change any of the requirement. Integration is one of the big bang at the end. When you are going to be integrated the complete modules which is defined by the system is a big bang, is a very difficult task to perform it and to make them a perfect model. Little opportunity for the customer to preview the system. There is a very little opportunity for the customer to preview their system in the prior case. Instead, they having a complete view of the system when it is going to be completed at once. So in between there is no introduction with the system. So that's why it is a very little interaction of the customer with their end product. It will be only delivered to them and then only they can test them or utilize them, that what requirement actually they are sending to them. Now, when to use the waterfall model? There are certain conditions where we will going to be use the waterfall model. When the requirements are very well defined, product definition are very stable. Technology is completely understandable by new version of an existing system will going to be generated, and porting an existing product to a new platform. You just need to be port your product to a new platform, then you will going to be perform this waterfall model. Before that, the waterfall model having no use to be done. Then that is the V-shaped SDLC model. There are a lot of other different deficiencies or lot of disadvantage in the waterfall model. That's why we will move to the V-shaped SDLC model. What are the different V-shaped SDLC models are? First of all, we having a project requirement to be taken. Then the project specification to be designed. Architecture of a high level will be going to be designed, and detailed design, and finally the coding. And for every level, there is a simultaneously integrated with the testing phase will be done. That means in the waterfall model, we are not testing the system at every step. That's why at the end of the stage, when we are going to be integrated the complete system, we need to be make them so difficult to integrate them and to make them comfortable or the integrated or the very suitable for each and every module to be one another. So that's why in the V-shaped model, we are having the opportunity to test at each level. When we are going to be take the requirement planning, then the production and maintenance will be done. When we are going to be produce the requirement specification, the system and acceptance testing will be going to be performed. Architecture level, we perform the integration testing. Detailed design, we perform the unit testing, and finally the coding will be done. That will help us to integrate the complete system very conveniently. So a variant of the waterfall model that emphasizes the verification and the validation of the product, that is known as a V-shaped SDLC model. So testing of the product is planned in parallel with the corresponding phase of the development. That's why the V-shaped model will be going to be performed the testing of their product to be done. Now, what are the steps done in this? The steps are, first is the project and the requirement planning, that will allocate the resources. What resources will going to be used while we are developing the complete system. Next, the complete specification of the software system will be defined here. Again, complete functionality or the function will going to be performed in the software function will be defined in the third phase. And in the detailed design, that means develop the algorithm for each architecture of the component, that what algorithm will going to be used at each of the level will be going to be defined in the detailed architecture. Now, next, at the parallelly, when we allocate the resources, we provide the enhancement and the correction to be done at the previous stage. When we are going to perform the complete specification of the software system, that check the entire software system and its environment, that how comfortably they can perform their functioning. When we perform defining the functions fulfillment, then also check the module interconnectivity. That means at the last end, when there is a problem of the integration of the system will not going to be occur, because previously we will going to be check the module comfortability at the end of their interconnection. The unit testing check that each module act as an expected. That means it is work expectedly. Then coding. transform the algorithm into the software. Finally, when all the testing will be done as parallelly to the system, that means we can perform the coding, and this will be help in removing the disadvantage of the waterfall model. That means in the waterfall model, we having the very big task to perform the integration at the end of the phase will be going to be reduced when we use the V-shaped SDLC model. Now, what are the different strengths in the SDLC? What advantages we are getting over the waterfall model? It emphasizes on the planning and the verification and the validation, which is one of the very important tasks in the software development. That means the verification, verify that the system is actually that which is need to be developed, and the validation is that means we validate whatever the functioning need to be performed, it is actually performing that, not other than that. So product in the early stage of the product development, we need not to be wait at the end product to be developed. Each deliverable must be tested at every milestone, at every deliverable. We will test it at the initial phase, at their end only. We need to be not wait for the end of the complete project. And the project management can track the progress by their milestone and easy to use, very comfortable to use, because at every level we will going to be testing will performed. Now, what are the actually disadvantages are also there? If we are trying to overcome the disadvantage of the waterfall model, some of the disadvantage come here in this also. It does not easily handle the concurrent event because we are concurrently performing each and everything. So, it is not easy to handle it. It does not handle the iteration of the phase because we are associated at every phase with the every testing. So, we cannot easily perform the iteration. It does not handle dynamically change of requirement, and it does not also contain the risk analysis activities. We are just testing the comfortability or the interconnection of the module at each phase. We are not calculating the risk will going to be done at the end of the phase, how much secure the system is, how much it will work healthfully in this complete software. So we are not checking that. That is a weaknesses or the disadvantage of the V-shaped model. When to use them? Excellent choice for the system requirement, high reliable. Hospital patient control application is one of the best use where we can perform the V-shaped SDLC model. All requirements are known upfront when it can be modified to handle the changes requirement beyond the analysis phase, and the solution and technology are completely known to this. Mainly, where the solution and technology is known, we can easily use the V-shaped model. Now, we having certain different disadvantages, so that's why we moving to the evolutionary prototyping model. What says prototyping model? That means we need not to, customer need not to be wait at the end product. A small prototype will going to be delivered to them so that the customer is very familiar to their end product and will change their requirement or give their changes or whatever the things they want to be changed, modified them is done in the initial phase, need not to be wait for the end product. That will reduce the cost or reduce the effort which is done by the developer. So the developer build a prototype during the requirement phase only. Once you take the requirement, make a prototype, a dummy model, which will help the user to familiar with. Prototype is evaluated by the end user. Definitely the one who will use this prototype or the system will interact with this. User gives the corrective feedback. The developer further refine the prototype, whatever the requirement taken up by the customer is actually make them corrective, and finally when the user get completely satisfied that yes, this will be my end product after qualifying or after passing your prototype, only then the developer start producing the end product or the actual system. So what are the different steps involved in this? Primarily, the project planning is developed. That means first the complete project planning is done. Then partially the high level paper model is created, that how the functioning, how the system will going to be created. A model in a source for the partial requirement specification. A prototype is built with the basic and the critical attributes. So the designer will build the database, interface and algorithm function and create a prototype. So the designer demonstrate the prototype, and user will going to be use them or suggest or giving the feedback over it. Whatever the suggestion will become, the loop will continue once again. The complete designing is done, the modification is done, and again the prototype will be performed. And this will stop until the user will going to be satisfied with the prototype. Once the user will satisfy with the prototype, then the developer start developing the end product. That will be the main steps involved in the prototyping. What are the strengths in this? The customer see the system before the end system will be produced. They can take the feel of their system, that how my software will going to be performed at the final stage. Developer learn from the customer, feedback will be produced. Accurate end product will be delivered to the customer, which will help to make them satisfied their product. Unexpected requirement accommodate whatever the unexpected to the development and developer, but expected by the customer will be accommodated in the system. Allow the very flexible design in this. Study the visible sign, and it additionally needed the functionality. What functionality they needed will be incorporated or added into the system. That will be the strength of the prototype. What are the weaknesses? The weaknesses are tendency to abandon structured program development for code and fix the development. Bad reputation for the quick and a dirty method. Overall maintainability can be overlooked. The customer may want to prototype delivered as soon as possible, and sometimes the user feel that this prototype is my end product and try to take a back step to create the complete end product if they are getting satisfied from this, which will be reducing or get the loss for the company to be done. So the process may continue forever with the scope of the creep. And sometimes very unexpected and unconditional requirement will become, which is not in the budget of the software and will be forced by the customer to be done. So, which will also give the loss to the developers. When to use this? When the requirements are unstable, the customer is not completely known that what they actually want. That's why with the help of the prototype, we are trying to make them visible and ask them what actually you wanted. As the requirement clarification stage of the waterfall model, develop the user interface, short-lived demonstration, new original development, and also object-oriented development will be done, where we can easily use the prototype model for the developing of the software. Now, next one is the rapid application model. This is another type of the SDLC model which will be used to perform the or to develop our software. This is a rate model which having first is requirement planning phase, where the complete requirement to be taken up. Then the user description phase, where the user will going to be described their capture information from the user. And also the construction phase, where the productivity tool will be used to perform or to generate the complete product. And the cutover phase, installation of the system at the end user, and the acceptance testing and the user training will be performed in the rate model. Now, what are the different strengths? What is the advantage of using the rate model? Reduce the cycle time. When we are improving the productivity, where very few members are involved, and we are trying to develop a method, we are trying to develop a model which require a very less time to be given by the customer, will be helped while developing the software with the help of the rate model. So the time box approach, mitigation the cost and the scheduling risk, customer involved the throughput, and use the modeling concept to perform or to capture the information about the business and the processes which will going to be used while the product will be delivered to the user. What are the different weaknesses are there? What actually disadvantage we are facing while we are using the rate model? Must give the quick response to the user. It give the accelerate development process give the quick response to the user. Risk of never achieving closure, that will never achieved by this, that the closure will be not done, hard to use with the legacy system, require a system that can be modularized, and the developer and customer must be committed to the rate fire abbreviation, the time frame. That means they want their product to be delivered in a rapid mode, in a very before time which will be scheduled to them. That are the different disadvantages we are facing while we are performing the rate model for development of the software. Now, when the rate model is to be used, when actually is going to be used? Well, known requirement is there, throughput the life cycle, time box, increment, low technical risk and system can be modularized. There, we can easily use the rate model. Next is the incremental SDLC model. Now, in this SDLC model, first of all, we having starting with the waterfall model. At the product designing, we perform the incremental of the same process. That means when you are giving the system feasibility, requirement are generated, validate them the productivity, you make a little or a version of a model and release into the market that will be used. If as per the user interaction, as per the user requirement, as per the user feedback, we again perform the designing and release the another model. So construct a partial implementation of the total system, then slowly and increased functionality. By then incremental model prioritize the requirement of the system, and then we have the complete implementation of that group. Now, each subsequent release of the system add with the functionality until the complete design will be going to be developed. So, incremental is just like the version we are facing in a day-to-day life. That means, suppose you having the Android function, which having the different versions increases, or the Windows having the different version as per the requirement, as per the feedback of the customer. We are performing the incremental model and release the versions of the software. Now, what are the different strengths? Actually, the advantages we are getting, we develop high risk or major functionality first. Ease to release and deliver them. Customer can respond to the build-up and we are getting the feedback from them. Divide and conquer. Break down the task. Lower the initial delivery cost. Initial delivery cost will be reduced. The initial product delivery will be going to fast. Customer get the important functionality in a very earlier phase. So these are the different advantages we are getting from the incremental model. But some of the disadvantages also there, that it require a good planning and designing in the early phase. Require early definition, complete and full functionality, well-defined module to be need to be defined them, and total cost of the complete system is not lower. It is very high. So that's why this is the weaknesses of this incremental model, where we will going to be used the risk funding schedule, where early realization of the benefit going to be performed. Most of the requirement are known up the front, but we expected to involve the overtime. So where there we will use the incremental model. It need to get the basic functionality in the market early phase. So these are the some of the platform where we can easily use the incremental model. Now, the spiral model. Till then, we are discussing about the model which is based on the phases or perform the iteration, but never we are not analyzes the risk analysis, where the risk is not at all tolerable. For there, we are using the spiral model, there the SDLC model. Here we having the complete model is done in the spiral phase. At each phases, the 4 phases are divided, and the every phase we are going to be analysis the risk. Perform, give the start, requirement analysis, design, implementation, give the prototype and analysis the risk. As like the software in the satellite, where the risk is not at all tolerable, there we are using the SDLC. The cost is not the matter, the risk is not at all tolerable. There we perform the SDLC model. So at the risk analysis and the red prototyping model and the waterfall model at each cycle, that is known as the spiral model. Now, the spiral model determines the objective of the alternative and the constraint. The objective is functionality, perform, critical success of the factor. The alternative are to build, reuse and to contract. And the constraints, what are those? The cost, scheduling and the interface. These are the constraints in this. Now, what are the different evaluation parameters? Study the alternatives, identify the risk and resolve the risks at the each and every level and the each and every phase. That is known as the main quadrant of the spiral model. Next quadrant will define the develop of the next level product. Create the design, review the design, develop the code and perform the testing of the product in the another quadrant. And in the final quadrant, we plan the next phase, how the project is actually developed and it will going to be installed at the final stage will perform in the spiral quadrant. So what are the strengths in this? Actually, the main advantage we are getting from here, that the risk analysis, that how the risk will going to be reduced as much as possible when we are using the spiral model. In the spiral model, at every phase, at every level, we are actually calculating the risk, how much risk is going to be performed or make them reduced, where the software do not able to tolerate a little bit delay in their performance. So critically, the high-risk functionality to be developed first, user can closely tied in the lifecycle steps, and early and frequently feedback from the user can be received. So that's why the cost will going to be high, but the risk is going to be reduced at any cost. But here the weaknesses are. The weakness are in the evaluating the risk is too large. So the time spent will going to be very high. The model is very complex, is spiral is continuously undefined, that how much it will take the time. The cost will going to be high, and the sometime the team will going to be interact, and it's very difficult if the team will going to be changed to make them understandable. These are the weaknesses we are finding from the spiral model. Now, when to use the spiral model, where the creation of the prototype is very appropriate and the requirements are very complex. Risk is need to be reduced at any cost. Constraint is not there. Time constraint is not there. There we can easily use the spiral model. Now, what is the agile SDLC? The agile SDLC will help in speed up the bypass and more the life cycle phase. Usually less formal and reduce the scope. Used for the time critical application. Used in the organization where the employee of the disciplined method will be going to follow up. Some agile methods are these: adaptive, software development, feature-driven development, crystal clear, dynamic software development. These are some of the methods, so we can use them for the agile method.